getting the movie the other day, and we really loved it, but we want to give you an in-depth review of kind of what we felt about it. And so, just so you know, this is a huge spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the movie yet, do not continue.
Yeah, haven't seen the movie, haven't read the book, just stop.
Stop watching now.
Turn it off.
Yes, but if you have read the book and you're interested in what's in store for the movie, then
or if you just don't care about spoilers.
Yeah, that too. Then you can just keep watching. So,
but you have been warned, so don't get angry.
Yes. Okay, so for starters, we both really loved it. We thought it was a great book to screen adaptation. It's probably one of the best adaptations we've seen. And as much as we love Harry Potter, we fully admit that this is a better adaptation than the Harry Potter films.
It's possibly just a better movie in general than the majority of the Harry Potter films. Not all of them necessarily, but it's a movie that reaches a wider audience, and people will be much more pleased with than with the Harry Potter movies, we think.
Yes, and it's much truer to the books, which is one of the things that we liked. And one of the things was that the things that they did change or add in, they made sense and didn't detract from the original story.
And it fit with the characters and helped move the story along, as opposed to adding new stories or completely changing characters' behaviors from the book. It all was still very canon, and it worked. Like, it helped the story as opposed to hurting the story.
Yes, and so that was one thing that we really appreciated.
Yeah, some examples of some of the things we're talking about is all the scenes with President Snow in the Rose Garden.
None of those are in the book actually, but they were added in, and they worked really well.
We don't see Snow at all, except for when he introduced the book and then crowns them at the end.
Introduce the book?
Introduces. We don't see Snow at all, except when he introduces the Hunger Games.
Yes.
And then crowns them at the end. But in this movie, you see him 3 or 4 times talking to Seneca Crane, basically, about the rebellion that's about to be started that Katniss is causing.
And so those were really good add-ins. One of the other things that we liked, originally we were a little concerned about Josh Hutcherson playing Peeta. He didn't quite fit the image that we had in our minds of who Peeta was. But as soon as you got to the interview part where he's talking to Caesar Flickerman, then he becomes Peeta, and you're like, yes, exactly, he is
perfect.
Peeta.
That was like better than I could have ever hoped for. So we're really happy with all the casting.
Yeah, the casting was really done well. Everyone seemed to, pretty much everyone, after Peeta came up to our expectations, everyone else was spot on, and we thought they were perfect. Cinna, for instance, he was perfect.
Katniss was great. Jennifer Lawrence, you did amazingly. Thank you.
And then Gale was really good. Everyone was just great. Hamish was great. Effie Trinket.
Oh my god.
Elizabeth Banks was phenomenal as Effie Trinket. Oh, that was great.
Yeah.
So casting was great.
Okay, one other thing that we were really nervous about was how they were actually going to explain everything and do everything in the Hunger Games, because in the book, it's all inside Katniss's head. Like, once they're in the Hunger Games, there's maybe 5 major scenes with dialogue. The rest is just her running around, analyzing things, trying to find water, trying to, just survive, and there's no conversation or interaction with anything, basically. And so we were really worried about that, but we thought the movie did it perfectly. Like, they used Claudius and Caesar Flickerman to explain what's happening, or explain the Tracker Jackers.
They were basically just commenting on what's going on, and so they're explaining the things that Katniss would originally explain. And we thought that was a really clever way of explaining the same things
while staying from Katniss's perspective.
Yes.
Okay, so moving on to things that we didn't necessarily like, but I think just to say, we didn't hate anything.
We understand.
We understand changes.
Yes.
There was just a couple of things that we were disappointed that they left out or changed, but all of these are like really small.
Yeah, they're really minimal things.
Right, but the number one was Rue's death.
Yes. I've only seen the movie once.
I saw it again just last night, and the second time, I was emotional on Rue's death. The first time I saw it, I expected to be emotional, but it didn't happen like the book.
I didn't have the reaction I expected to have towards Rue's death when I saw it. I was sad and it was emotional, but I just felt like the way,
Cause like, okay,
it didn't seem like she was dying until she was actually dead.
mm-hmm.
And so I was.
And for a second, you think Katniss saved her, and you're like, what's
Yeah,
going on? Is her not dying?
It wasn't completely believable until it actually happened, and so I didn't get the same emotional response that I had when I actually read about her dying. But
yeah, I saw it for a second time just last night, and I was perfectly okay with it. I thought it was a lot better than I did the second time.
so
Than the first time.
I guess I'll find out when I see it again for the second time if I feel the same way. But as of now, I'm a little disappointed in her death, so we'll see how.
I'm okay with it now. It's good, but I mean, okay, and I think they could have made it more gut-wrenching, but I think they purposely watered it down like they did a lot of the violence in the movie to keep their PG-13 rating, which isn't necessarily a complaint. I understand it. That they couldn't make it super graphic, and I understand the weird cuts they do and stuff, so that you don't actually, minus a couple of times, see the actual impact of a weapon or the actual moment of killing. You just see the fight and then they're dead.
Yeah.
So I understand that, and I understand that they had to do that.
So another thing that we didn't super love was the mutations at the end. In the book, they were supposed to have facial characteristics similar to the other tributes that had already passed away.
Like their eyes mostly was, and like Katniss actually questioned whether or not it was actually their eyes that they like took from their dead bodies, or if they're just made by the Capitol.
And this in the book was a great example of the psychological torment that was involved in the Hunger Games, as well as the physical trauma.
That President Snow continues throughout the rest of the books with
the
whole psychological game.
And so we felt like that was an important part, and they just kind of...
They didn't do it. And we feel like they easily could have. Like when they were showing the mutations, they showed it in the control room and then like creating them and bringing them up on these screens. Well, we feel like they could have easily brought up the mutation dog thing, then brought up a picture of a tribute and like meshed it together and then put it in.
I mean, they were CG anyways. We feel like there could have been some way to...
They could have easily explained
put their face on the mutation, and then Katniss could just say, "Oh my gosh, it's their eyes" or something like that.
Because I think in the book, Peeta's like, is it them?
Yeah, like so they know in the book that it's their eyes and stuff, and so I feel like it could have easily translated into the movie, but I guess I understand that they maybe didn't want to have to try to explain that or try and merge those two things together, but we feel like it could have been easy enough for them to do.
And without the psychological aspect of the mutations, they're just random dogs that are chasing them.
And now mutations are present throughout the entire series, and so now they're going to have to bring it up in a whole new way in the next.
Well, I mean, some brings on another point. They never explain Mockingjays.
Yeah, they explain. No, they don't explain them at all. They just kind of.
Rue says that they use them to carry messages in, her district.
Yeah.
That is it. There's never anything about Jabberjays breeding with Mockingjays.
And how Mockingjays are like a stick it to the Capitol type thing.
Yeah, the thing that never meant to exist or whatever.
Yeah, and so obviously that's important to the series.
I do assume that they're gonna
bring it up.
Go into it in the next movie, but I feel like that was an important thing to bring up.
And
otherwise the Mockingjay pin doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't mean rebellion to Katniss at the time, but it's talked about throughout it.
Yeah, and it's an important theme, so we feel like that's kind of necessary. That and the mutations in general kind of needed to be there, we think.
Yeah, especially since, again, spoilers if you haven't read the second book, stop here. Since pretty much towards the beginning, she has the Mockingjay gown that bursts, the wedding dress that bursts into a Mockingjay.
Yeah.
So they're gonna have to explain it really quickly that the Mockingjay is now the symbol of
the rebellion,
of the revolution. So I feel like that definitely should have been introduced way earlier.
There was one other thing that we weren't super impressed with.
Peeta's leg.
Peeta's leg, yes. Okay.
Peeta does not lose his leg.
And in the book, obviously, he does. And we understand that for 3 movies, they don't want to have to deal with
2 or 3 movies. They don't want to deal with
having him have a prosthetic the entire time. So we get it, but
that was a big part.
Yeah, like Peeta doesn't have a leg anymore. Okay, never mind. He does.
You know what?
You can keep it.
However, bringing it back to Harry Potter. Harry Potter didn't kill Peter Pettigrew. That's a huge thing, and this is understand them. We
Yes, we
understand
understand why they're not doing that.
what happened.
That I don't understand with Peter Pettigrew. Irrelevant to Hunger Games, but we're still clearly upset about
There's
it.
just
so.
one other thing another thing that they left out, and I understand why they left it out, but it's kind of one of my favorite parts of the entire book. I don't even think, we discussed it briefly. At the end, when they are finally announced as, the tributes, then they're taken up in the hovercraft, they're separated, and Katniss goes
She freaks
crazy.
out because
she's banging on the glass and screaming
has
for
lost his
Peeta.
leg, and he's
Oh no, not that part. It's
not,
just,
not yet, but he's all
bleeding
beat
to
up.
death.
He's about to lose his leg, and she's freaking out, and it really shows that Katniss cares more about him than just this story that she's portraying for the people who are watching the games, and she is.
And it's such an emotionally charged moment.
Yes.
Like they have won, but now they're freaking out that something else is happening, and she doesn't know if he's alive or dead eventually.
And I feel like it's pivotal to describing her relationship with Peeta, and
that she does.
you just don't see it. And so if you don't read the books, which you should if you haven't, but if you're not a book reader, then you're not going to get that, and that's an important portrayal of her emotions.
Also after that, during the tribute or the Victor interview, I guess, with Caesar Flickerman, that's when she finds out his leg's amputated, and she's like,
and he's like limping
oh
out.
my
She
God.
hasn't seen him really until then.
yeah. So I feel like that's a big thing that I would love to see, because that's seriously one of my favorite
parts.
Yeah.
And so those were our main favorite and least favorite things about the movie. And again, we really enjoyed it, and the things that we didn't
Great
like,
movie.
we understand, and they're so minimal that we can look past it to see the phenomenon that was that movie. And it was so good.
Even though they did change those things or leave things out, it completely felt like the book.
Yes,
Like
it was so true to
just the
entire
feeling.
of the book. It was so true to it, and we are so grateful that they actually did it right, because we were really concerned and worried, and so we're really happy.
Yep. And so here's to hoping that the next 2 or 3 movies, depending on what they do, which I'm hoping it's just 2, will continue to be as accurate and as great.
Yes.
So happy Hunger Games!
Let us know what you thought in the comments, and go ahead and subscribe.